Man who needs no introduction, Mr. Matt Tissier.
I believe in something, so I'll say it and I'll say it as I think it is. And if people don't like it, tough shit. I felt it was an infringement on my human rights, but I know what that organisation stands for, and I'm not comfortable having that logo on my jacket.
48 penalties, 47 scored. I've got written down here, the greatest ever from a 12-yard spot. How true is that?
I don't know everybody else's record in professional football, but I'm pretty proud of my record as a penalty taker. One of the biggest reasons why I was successful 47 times out of 48 was because I actually looked forward to taking penalties.
Disclaimer, this Matt Tissier interview has been heavily edited due to the nature of some of the conversations that we had. To see or hear the full version, go over to the other platforms and specifically go over to the podcast audio app to listen to the full uncensored version. Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my podcast, Stephen Sulley's Study. We're in a beautiful area, Hampshire.
Indeed.
With my next brilliant podcast guest, man who needs no introduction, Mr. Matt Tissier, or as I've got written down here, Le God.
That was a long time ago, mate. That was a long time ago. Feels like a whole world ago.
Yeah. This is a beautiful part of the world. I'm really impressed with it. You know, I was driving down here from where I live in Lock's Bottom.
Yeah.
Beautiful drive. Stopped over to, you know, have a piss, have a drink, have a bit of food at one of the local pubs.
Yeah.
Make some notes before all my podcast interviews. I was like, do you know what? If I lived around there, it'd be quite a pleasant place.
It is pretty cool out here in the countryside. We've got a lovely little village here, and the only thing that's missing is a pub. We don't have a pub in the village, so we've got to try and change that, I think. But the locals are quite happy the way it is.
Yeah. Do you know what? I saw quite a lot of pubs on the way down here. I mean, I picked.
Yeah, there's
Chris
one in the next village along. There's one, you know, down in towards Romsey, which is the one I think that you stopped and had some lunch in. So there is some nice places, but it's just in our little village here. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Apart from the farm shop at the end of the road, which is great.
So look, quite naturally, I know you've done a lot of podcasts. I know you've been centre of attention in the last few years for good stuff and other stuff that I don't perceive as necessarily bad. But I know how the media portrayed it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the public are going to perceive it as negative press, but at the same time, I think it was just you speaking your mind. So I'm going to start probably there.
Sure.
And then sort of work my way back to, you know, the football days, etc.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm 36 years of age and I knew life before social media. I knew the media back then as this type of platform that would just give you news. But now we have the blessing and the curse, which is social media. So if we believe something to be true or false, we can kind of verify it by going onto social media, having a look at it, cross-referencing it, and actually speaking to someone directly to get their answer. And if it's a doctor, if it's an accountant, professional, etc., about a specific topic, you can kind of get an education and some experience via them.
Yeah.
But let's have it right. I mean, the media portray certain individuals when they're outspoken as a certain radical individual.
Far-right conspiracy theorist is the most favourite slur that gets thrown around these days whenever you dare to question something that is on the mainstream media.
Absolutely.
I've never been political in my life, so I wouldn't even know what far-right was. You know, I don't think I've ever voted in a general election, so to be you know, labelled as a far-right conspiracy theorist is just something so far wide of the mark, I actually have to laugh at it.
Yeah, yeah. Freedom of speech.
Yep.
Is it dead?
If it's not dead, it's certainly on a life support machine right now, because there are a lot of people in the mainstream media who don't want you to have freedom of speech. There's a lot of people in government and above the governments that don't want you to have freedom of speech because it's the one thing that keeps democracy alive, really. And for them to have total control over the population, the first thing they have to do is stop freedom of speech, and that's what's been happening in the last couple of years.
How have you experienced, like, the freedom of speech kind of, they've tried to imprison you in a certain category or certain bucket?
Yeah, I mean, when you go against what the mainstream media are saying in the government narrative, when you go against that, they'll attack you, they'll label you, and they'll try and use that to silence you. Fortunately for me, I was pretty mentally strong in my football career, and so I'm still strong enough as a person to believe in what I think is happening, and so just by throwing a few slurs around from people in the media, it's not going to shut me up. And I believe in something, so I'll say it, and I'll say it as I think it is. And if people don't like it, tough shit.
It's good view to take. Listen, I personally am not always going to agree with everybody in the world and their thoughts, feelings,
No one
views,
will.
etc.
Well,
But
this is the thing.
I support your view on freedom of speech. If you believe in something,
exactly.
you should be allowed to express it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And nobody will meet anybody in this world and agree on everything. I mean, you can have. This is why the labelling of people into groups is such a stupid thing, because everybody holds different opinions. Not everybody in a certain community holds the same views on every subject. So when you try labelling an entire group of people as a far-right conspiracy theorists, all that kind of stuff, you label people. If you actually speak to the individuals in that group, they'll all have very differing opinions on subjects, so they should never be lumped together as one.
Reminds me of a conversation I had yesterday. The podcast hasn't come out yet, but it will soon, with a guy called Gian Power. He's not a famous guy, but he's got a very, very compelling story. Basically, his dad died, got murdered in 2015 in India. Very successful businessman, and there was a ploy, it looks like, to murder him to siphon off his money via his business partners and some affiliates. The story gets even weirder. His body was flown back from India to the UK, and it ended up not being his dad's body. And the murderers still are roaming free today, never been brought to justice, and they live in the UK. And the reason being is because there's a bit of a loophole. In India, there is corporate punishment, which is execution, if you are convicted of murdering someone.
Yeah.
But over here, we've got human rights. So they won't send them back to India to be tried in case they are executed. So they're walking around. So he's gone to Guillen's, a very outspoken guy, very brave guy, very, very, he's got a lot of energy behind what he believes in. He's trying to get the law changed, but he's gone to 10 Downing Street, he's done a lot. And I said to him, why are you coming on to like my podcast if you have a podcast to tell this story? Because it must be quite emotional every time you do this, even though I appreciate what you're doing. He said, I've got to get enough media attention. It's got to flare up so badly that the authorities have to do something about it. And now what it makes me think is, if enough people flared up and said, no, I'm not doing this.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to be put down. The authorities will have to do something about it. They have to back off.
Yeah,
Reminds me of the same sort of thing.
And that's why, all those years ago when the government tried to implement the poll tax, and they had the protest back then and they backed down. They tried to mandate the vaccine for NHS workers, and they had the big protest in London in January. And they back down. So if enough people do it, they will back down. And it's been interesting just the last couple of days with the energy bills. And there's a group there that are saying cancel your direct debits and make the energy companies go to the ombudsman. And that's going to cost the energy companies loads of money if you do that. And within a short period of time, they had nearly 100,000 followers on Twitter. That's a lot of people to mobilise in a short space of time. And then all of a sudden you get people on the television saying, oh, it's really dangerous, might cost you more money if you do that, so don't do that. So I look at that and go, well, if somebody on the television is telling me not to do that, I'm going to do it, because I know what's coming out of that box is a load of crap.
Didn't Warren Buffett say, when people are fearful, be greedy, and when people are greedy, be fearful? And there's a slight sort of relevance to that. It's almost like, look at the masses. He actually said this as well in one of his books: observe the masses and do the opposite.
Absolutely.
And I think that's put him in good stead for investments. And I think generally speaking, like if you can do something slightly different than the norm, you're going to get better results.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, when you find yourself on the side of the majority, take a hard look at yourself.
Yeah, because I know your story is after playing professional football and having a very, very successful career and being the star that you were and are at Southampton, and be given this nickname Le God. You were at Sky Sports as a pundit, and then you were let go. I think that's the right term.
Sacked, I think. Was
fired after almost 20 years.
Yep.
And it was because of some of your views. And going back to what you just said there, do you think people have a bit of a catch-22? At one breath is, look, I want to say what I really feel, but if I do, I'm going to lose my job. And at the end of the day, this is providing income for me and my family.
Yeah, of course. I understand the position that they're in. I do, but there are some people that aren't in that position, but still choose to. They still choose to not say anything about what they know is going on.
This is now the second time a dog,
hello, dog,
on one of my podcasts has come on and made a guest appearance. How you doing?
Hey, Maddie, thanks for your. Go on, off you go. Go inside. Come on, you don't come outside. It's too hot.
Yeah, so they're they're sort of boxed into a corner, as it were.
Some people are boxed into a corner because they obviously need the money, and I completely understand that, and I completely respect that. But that doesn't stop me from thinking they're a bit cowardice. They're a bit cowardly because there's other ways to earn money as well, and you've got to back yourself sometimes. And you know, I kind of was put in that position. I didn't voluntarily leave my job, but yeah, I mean, they've never actually come out and said because of my views that was the reason I was sacked. I was actually told that they're taking the show in a different direction, and 3 of us got sacked all at the same time. But you know, there's other work out there. There's other ways of earning a living, and you adapt and you make the best of what you got, and that's what I've had to do.
Yeah. There is something I listened to in a previous podcast interview and also what I've read online, and there was this thing surrounding the Black Lives Matter. If you could just a bit elaborate on that. Yeah,
so when the whole George Floyd thing happened, we turned up for work and we were just about to go in the studio. In fact, we were in the studio at Soccer Saturday, and about a minute before we were going to go on air, the producer came in and he gave us all these Black Lives Matter badges. And I kind of looked at him and I went, do we have to wear these? And he looked at me and he just went, it's probably in your best interest if you do. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't very comfortable with it, but we were literally just about to go on air. So I couldn't have an argument with the producer, so I just put it on for that show. And throughout the afternoon, I felt really uncomfortable throughout the show. And at the end of the show, I just went to the producer and I said to him, I took the badge off and I gave it him back and I went, look, I said, I won't be wearing that badge ever again. I said, if you want me to wear a badge which, you know, the Kick It Out campaign, you know, stop racism, all that kind of stuff, I'm happy to wear whatever badge, but I know what that organisation stands for and I'm not comfortable having that logo on my jacket and I won't be wearing it again. And so that's what I did. I wore a different badge the next week. And eventually, it took a while, but eventually all the people on that channel stopped wearing the badge. I just thought it was I felt it was an infringement on my human rights to be kind of put in that position where I didn't want to be associated with that movement. And I know they've come out and the Premier League have said, well, that's not, you know, it's not that movement that we're supporting. Well, if it's not that movement you're supporting, why did you choose those 3 words? Choose a different slogan that doesn't correspond to that organisation in America. And so, yeah, that's that. I don't know if that led to one of the things that led to me being sacked. I don't know. It might have done, might not. Who knows?
So what does Black Lives Matter actually really mean then?
Well, the organisation that were causing all the trouble in America, you know, they stood for wanting to defund the police. They wanted to destroy the family unit. That was one of their objectives. And that kind of went against everything that I think is useful in society. I actually think, you know, that it's a good thing that we have families, and it's a good thing that we have law enforcement, as long as they're actually doing their job of protecting the people and not just doing the dirty work of the people above them, which is sometimes what happens with our law enforcement.
Do you miss being at Sky Sports, because you were there for almost 20 years? I mean, you sometimes must recap and think, you know what, I miss that routine?
It's actually been quite nice to actually have some weekends back to myself, because kind of for 9 months of the year you were kind of in the TV studio, and so, you know, for stuff like what happened last weekend, my mate rang me up and went, he said, I'm not using my season ticket for the Spurs Southampton game, do you want to use it? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm not doing anything Saturday, so I went up and watched. Unfortunately, Spurs smacked my team 4-1, but it was actually quite nice. I just drove up on my own, parked up, walked about a mile into the ground, had a bit of food on the way, sat, watched the game, and tootled on back down here. So that was actually quite nice, and I enjoyed that. So from that point of view, yeah, I don't miss being on television every Saturday afternoon.
So, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, as a business person that you are now since football, obviously that was paying you. How do you make your money and finances today?
So I have a pension from my football career, which we were able to start taking when we were 35, and I do after dinner speaking. You know, I do some work for Getter through my social media, through my live streams on Getter, and kind of personal appearances and just lots of little things that kind of accumulate, really. So yeah, it's the stuff that I lost through Sky has kind of been replaced. So I'm still in an okay position.
Well, the old saying is, when one door shuts, the other one opens.
Absolutely.
And, it's not, you know, press, good or bad press is, in my view, is actually ultimately good press, because people get to know you, and then you can provide a service off the back end of that.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, it's not the way I would have wanted my life to have panned out. You know, I did quite enjoyed my job. It was a pretty cool job to have. Sat around with your mates talking about football for 6 hours every Saturday afternoon was a really good laugh. But when the company that you're doing it for then starts becoming so politically motivated, then it wasn't much fun. And quite frankly, I really don't miss it. And if by some miracle they were to come back and go, actually, we want to get the show as it was back together again, would you do it? There's not a chance in hell that I would go and work for that company again.
My dad, as I said, he's on that side. My mum's on this side. I remember having a conversation with my dad about it, and suddenly they came out with an answer from a so-called expert, and they said, yeah, this is because they are stepping up the levels of training, and that's why some of the footballers are not coping with it, and they're collapsing. And that's what my dad said to me. I said, Dad, come on, do you honestly believe that there's got to be something else? So in your view, being an ex-professional footballer and still having a hand in it and knowing lots of footballers, are they stepping up things so much where they're collapsing on football pitches or in training?
Well, actually, you'd actually think, given all the science and the sports science that is around nowadays, you'd think that it would actually be better. You'd think that they would be better prepared. They've got all this technology to monitor people, all this technology to go, well, this is what their heart's like. You know, we've tested their heart. This is it. We think they should only go to this level. So you'd think, with all the stuff that they've got available to them now, it should be a lot safer to play football and most sports, professional sports in this day and age, because they've all got the sports scientists coming on board, robbing a living. And it's not. So why isn't it? Why isn't it, with all this stuff that you've got, all this data that you've got available to you, why isn't it safer than what it was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? It's not.
I want to jump onto two unrelated subjects to what we just spoke about, but this is more like how the media have taken something and maybe slightly twisted it. And I wanted to, number one, see if you said it, and number two, see if what you meant by it and if the media has really sort of span it. So on the 16th of April 2022 in The Guardian, Matt Le Tissier quit Southampton role after backlash over the Ukraine tweet. Now, obviously, that's not a quote by you, but this is written by The Guardian. So what they're talking about there?
So they're talking about the fact. So I highlighted a tweet from Unity News Network, who were basically explaining, my point was that both sides in a war will engage in propaganda. So all I was saying was that it's not just the Russians that are spouting propaganda on their news channels. If you don't think that we don't do that in times of war, then I think you're pretty naive. And that was kind of my point. I probably could have used a better example. It was quite an emotive issue that I used as the tweet that I quoted. So I could have used a better example.
What was the example?
And that I apologise. It was the massacre in Bucha.
Okay.
And so I could have used a better example. My point was, and I clarified it, I deleted the tweet and I clarified what I meant straight afterwards. But of course, your apology is only accepted if you're on the other side of the fence and you fuck up. You know, if you're on this side of the fence and you make an apology and you put your hand up and go, actually, I got that one wrong, I shouldn't have used that example. You know, that's it, you're vilified forever for using it. I did. I resigned as an ambassador for Southampton because the football club were, I found out that the football club were getting loads of people ringing them up going, oh, Matt Tissier shouldn't be your ambassador. So me being me, I didn't want Southampton Football Club to suffer in any way because of that. And so I contacted the football club and I went, so to stop you from getting any stick from people ringing you up, I'm going to resign my position as club ambassador. And that's what I did. Simple as that.
Well, ever since the whole lockdown days, coronavirus, even myself, when I look at anything on the news, I think how much of that is actually happening. Talking about football then, sport, being a professional athlete, how is it been a blessing and a curse being introduced to, let's specifically say, the football world, the football culture?
What, social media? I think it's been incredibly bad. I think social media has probably been the worst invention for people's mental health in the history of this world. It has some good bits to it. You know, it does make it easier to connect with people and to stay in touch and all that kind of stuff. But for me, the bad bits of social media far outweigh any of the benefits that they produce. And so I'm very pleased that I had pretty much my entire career without any social media. And if I was a professional footballer coming into the game in this day and age, there is not a chance in hell that I would have a single social media account. Not a chance. There
is the example of, and this is probably the most extreme and probably the most one that people look at and think, you know, if I'm a professional athlete, maybe I could take some of his market share, which is Ronaldo. He's the most followed person on Instagram in the whole entire world. I think it was like 425 million when I last looked at it. Something astronomical. And because of that platform, because of that following, just on that one account alone, bearing in mind he's got all the other accounts, I think he charges up to about $1.5 to $2 million per post. Now, I have heard allegedly, I'm no expert on this, but he obviously gets paid an absolute killing as a footballer, but he was actually making more outside of football because of the posting and stuff. I mean, and the brand endorsements and sponsorships and the brand alignments, etc. I mean,
that's up to him.
Do you think that's a good thing for an athlete, or do you think that hinders their performance?
I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to say that Ronaldo's performances have been hindered over the years. I mean, he's been a pretty special footballer. So I don't think you could make that argument against it. If that's what his ambition in life was, you know, to be monumentally wealthy, then fair play to him, and he's done a great job. He's been an outstanding footballer, one of the best the world has ever seen, and fair play to him. I was a bit different. I've never allowed money to be my god. I don't live my life chasing after more and more money. I just like to have enough money to, you know, have a comfortable life. You know, I didn't earn enough money from football. I didn't have to work again. And I don't mind that. I like working, and that's my philosophy on it all. If somebody has a different philosophy and they want to be the richest that they can possibly be, then fair play to him. He's done a brilliant job at it.
Yeah. I know I've heard other interviews and other write-ups that, you know, you were paid pretty well, but in comparison to today, it's a completely different planets. And
Yeah.
I had the same conversation with Sean Wright-Phillips recently, who's been on my podcast, and it's, by the time this one comes out, it would have come out, so I can share it. Basically, I asked him the question of, when you're coming up as a footballer or as an athlete, boxer's a really good example actually, tough guys, you know. Best example, Andy Ruiz Jr.,
yeah.
who beat Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
He was the first heavyweight Mexican ever in history. Beat him, he was the underdog, and then lost in his second fight, and he was fatter for his second fight than he was the first fight, which kind of shown that he wasn't really as motivated.
No.
So the point I'm trying to make is, with the amount of money coming in, I actually really enjoy it because it motivates me. I think, God, they're earning a lot of money. I can go out and earn a lot of money. I know I'm not a professional footballer, but if they can do it in something, surely there's a possibility of me doing it in something else. But then I think, how motivated are you going to be if you get 100 grand into your bank account every single week, whether you perform or not?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it's something that I think you do see manifest itself in football quite a bit with up and coming young players who, you know, they burst onto the scene and you go, oh my God, this guy is brilliant. He's going to have an amazing career. And then all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 years later, you go, what happened to him? You have to question whether getting given so much so young does take away that motivation factor in some people, not in everyone, because Ronaldo, as an example, has been unbelievably motivated till 37 years of age, whatever he is now. So you will get exceptions, but you'll also get a lot of people who go, oh, I've got enough money in my bank now to last me the rest of my life. Why do I need to go and bust my balls in pre-season training? Why do I need to get that little bit fitter? Because unless you've got that mentality to really want to drive you forward because of your sport and you love your sport, then it's very easy to go, I don't need to do that. I've got a 4-year contract on 150 grand a week and I'm guaranteed that money. Why do I have to try hard? So, you know, that was never a problem for me because I didn't have enough money and I didn't like trying hard.
I think it Sugar Ray Robinson said the quote of, it's hard to motivate yourself to go for a run at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're waking up in silk pajamas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there is a lot of truth in that.
Definitely.
And I think Anthony Joshua, as a boxer, has said this a few times where he'll go back to his old amateur club to look at the next prospects to realise they're hot on his tail if he doesn't keep on pushing himself.
Absolutely.
And I think every so often, to humble yourself, you got to go back to the grassroots.
Yeah,
You've got to go back to the basics.
Absolutely.
And realise what life was like before the fame and fortune.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the traits that I find really compelling in top sports people, is the ones that I have the most respect for are the ones that are the most humble.
Yeah. And, you know, with the money, I know Ronaldo is exception. I know probably someone like Messi is an exception, Neymar's etc. Beckham. But there are a lot of footballers, or the stereotype is get a lot of money, not so well educated, invest in it. These big brands or so-called financial advisors or the bad friends will come along and kind of siphon the money away, and you become a bit of a target.
Yeah.
How's that changed since you were a footballer to now?
I mean, it would have changed enormously because the amount of money that they're earning is a real lure for people like that, you know. And, you know, if footballers have kind of down the years have been shown to not be the sharpest tools in the box, and so there will be people trying to prey on them, and you just hope that they've got some good people around them that can spot the shysters that turn up trying to rob the money off them.
Yeah. I know you were offered, I think, a contract either with Tottenham or Chelsea, and you nearly moved down here.
Yep.
You've already answered kind of the question, but obviously the money would have been probably even better than you were getting at the time, and maybe other opportunities off the back end of that. Did you ever think like how your life might have been slightly different, or your career might have been slightly different if you did go to somewhere like a Chelsea or a Tottenham and played in London?
To be completely honest with you, I don't think I've spent a single minute wondering to myself how my career might have been differently if I made a transfer. It's not ever something that's crossed my mind. I'm completely happy and comfortable in all the decisions that I made as a footballer, completely at ease with all those decisions that I made. So I don't have a single regret about staying at Southampton my whole career. And I don't sit here and wonder, what if I did join Spurs in 1990? What if I did join Liverpool in 1992? What if I joined Chelsea in 1995? I can honestly say I've never sat and thought about it.
Do you have any international teams like Barcelona's, Real Madrid's, anyone like that ever sort of approach you?
Not those level of foreign teams. There were a couple of French teams that were interested at various times, but I think they saw my surname and thought I was one of them. But no, I was never interested in really going to play abroad, to be honest. I spent 17 great years at Southampton. I loved it, and I left a legacy at that football club that I hope people will still talk about what I did for Southampton long after I'm gone. And I think that's quite important to me, that, you know, my footballing skills were recognised. I don't care what people think of me as a person because of what's happened these last couple of years. There's some Southampton supporters that would have not been happy with what I've been saying over the last couple of years because they are on the other side of the fence, and that's fine. All I would say to them is, I don't mind you disagreeing with me at all. That's your prerogative, but you'll never be able to change what I did for Southampton Football Club. You can't rewrite the history books because I did that, and it's all there. It's on camera, and I'm proud of what I did for Southampton Football Club.
And on the contrary to that, there might have been some other supporters from other teams that probably didn't like you, not because of you as an individual, but because you were just a good player for an opposing team. But now, because of your views, you've converted them to actually be a Matt Le Tissier supporter and fan.
I've actually had quite a few Portsmouth supporters on my social media feed who have actually said, I'm a Portsmouth supporter, but actually, you're right, you know what you're on about.
Yeah.
So it does, it swings and roundabouts, and that's just the way it goes. But at the end of the day, I believe in what I'm saying to be true. And if somebody comes at me with evidence that will make me change my mind, then I'm not too arrogant enough to go, actually, yeah, you're right, actually. I've been wrong. I'm the first person to hold man up. If I think I'm wrong, I ain't afraid to say sorry, and I ain't afraid to say I'm wrong. But so far, there's been very few instances over these last couple of years where I've had to say sorry. There have been a couple, and happy to do that whenever I've got it wrong. But the majority of the time, nobody's managed to convince me that the other stuff that I've been saying has been wrong.
Yeah, well, it's always good, like when you get something wrong, to wear it, to own it,
Absolutely
and
right.
to pivot and just move on.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple more things then. When I listened to one of the other interviews, I never heard this psychology before, because I would say probably a lot of footballers or athletes are kind of media trained because they can't really speak the way you spoke on a podcast. But now you can, because obviously you're retired. And it was something along the lines of, when I played, it wasn't necessarily to win, it was to entertain. Mm-hmm. And I was there to enjoy myself and therefore to please the crowd.
Yep.
And I thought, it reminded me of boxing a bit. I'll tell you why. I'm a big Floyd Mayweather fan, right? A lot of people who might be a bit of a casual fan towards boxing, they would say, no, he's pretty boring. I said, no, he does everything he needs to do to win. His whole thing is about winning, not getting hurt, or not losing, not going to the floor. Yeah. But you got someone like Mike Tyson will go in there and try and knock everybody out to entertain, but by going through that process, he might get knocked out.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you might be the Mike Tyson version as a footballer. So what did you mean by you play to enjoy yourself rather than win?
So I've always viewed football as an entertainment industry. That's what it's meant to be. People pay money, good money, to come and watch and be entertained by you, by the football. And so I've always loved my sporting heroes. If I told you who my sporting heroes were as a kid, you'd understand why I played football the way I played football. So, you know, I was a big sports fan, lots of different sports. So Ian Botham was my ultimate cricket hero. Jimmy White at snooker, Ernie Els, Phil Mickelson at golf. All players who were so naturally gifted and who just looked like they just wanted to be out there having fun, and they entertained people. And so my footballing hero was Glenn Hoddle. Glenn was the same. He played football the way that he wanted to play it, and he did it to entertain people. And there's nothing better. I didn't get any better feeling than doing something on a football pitch, and that actually makes most of the stadium stand up and clap and go, "Oh my God, that's brilliant!"
Yeah.
And that just gave me so much satisfaction. People paid a lot of money. A lot of people have 9 to 5 jobs, and their release from all of that is going to watch the football on the weekend. And if you can put a smile on their faces, it was a pretty cool feeling to be able to do that and know that you've done something on a football pitch that probably nobody else who's watching the game could have done, because I was born with an ability to do that stuff, and I love doing it. And so I'm pretty open about it, that I've always viewed football as an entertainment industry, and it wasn't always about the winning for me.
And you made it so it looked so seamless. It was almost like you didn't have to try.
There was a lot of practice that went into it in my younger years. So I just grew up with a ball at my feet a lot of the time, and just messing about, just trying different things. Working on my first touch. The amount of hours that I would spend smashing the ball against the wall, just having it come back to me as quickly as possible and seeing if I could control it. So there was a lot of hard work that went into it early on. And people kind of just see the end product and go, "Oh, blimey, he just made that look so easy." But what they didn't see is all the years growing up in Guernsey, me on my own sometimes with a wall and a ball, and just working and getting better at controlling the football. And so it might have looked like, because I've got quite a casual manner. When I'm on a football pitch, I've got quite a languid running style. That's just the way I run, and that's what made people go, "Oh, he's lazy," because I just run a bit differently. But it felt easy to me at times. Certainly when I had a manager that believed in me, and I was high in confidence, then the stuff that I was doing on a football pitch, it did feel like it did come easy to me. Yeah.
48 penalties, 47 scored. I've got written down here, the greatest ever from a 12-yard spot. How true is that?
How true is that? I don't know everybody else's record in professional football, but I'm pretty proud of my record as a penalty taker. That somebody will probably beat that at some point, because that's what happens to records that were there to be broken. Somebody might have had a better record somewhere else in the world, I don't know. But I know that I enjoyed taking penalties, and that I think was one of the biggest reasons why I was successful 47 times out of 48, was because I actually looked forward to taking penalties.
So what is the secret of taking a penalty? Like, I'm obviously a novice football guy, so if I were to take a penalty today, what is the basic fundamentals that I need to know?
Well, the first fundamental is what I've just said, is you need to want to be there in the first place, because it's quite a tense, quite a nervous situation. You've got a free shot from 12 yards, and everybody in the stadium is expecting you to score. The pressure's on you. There's no pressure on the goalkeeper. If he saves it, he's a hero. If it goes in, you go, "Wow, it's a free shot from 12 yards. You're not expected to save that." So all the pressure is on the penalty taker, and so you have to be comfortable in that situation. And I was always comfortable with pressure on my shoulders. It didn't bother me. I was quite laid back, and so I viewed a penalty as a great chance to score a goal. And that's how I looked at it. So whenever a penalty was given, I was like, "Oh, get in. This is a goal." And just once, it just didn't quite go right.
Well, that explains, if you could deal with the pressure back then, it explains a lot of the psychology and how you can deal with the pressure today with the media and stuff.
Yeah, but I don't even see that as pressure. I could understand taking a penalty as pressure. I took a penalty on the last day of the season at Upton Park, and we could have got relegated that day.
Wow. And
we got a penalty. I think we were losing the game 2-1 at the time, and so it was a big moment in the game, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of calm and belief that I'm going to score this, and it didn't faze me in any way, shape, or form. And so the stuff that taking abuse in the media, that's not even pressure. If they knew how little it bothered me, they wouldn't even bother trying to have a go at me.
Yeah. And how do you feel? And I know it's going to sound like a very obvious question, but representing England, having was it 8 caps over?
It was 8 caps.
3 years.
Yeah, it was 8 caps over. Yeah, it was a period of 3 years. As a kid, I had 2 ambitions in my life from about the age of 8, and it was to be a professional footballer and to play for England. And they were the 2 things I wanted to achieve in my life. And by the age of 25, I'd managed to do both of them. And so that was a pretty cool feeling to do that. Looking back now, I mean, I was just a little kid growing up in Guernsey. We'd barely had a professional footballer from Guernsey, let alone somebody who had played for England. So me at 8 years of age, that felt like a really lofty ambition to be a professional footballer and to play for my country, because nobody from Guernsey had ever done that. So that felt like...
There was no national team there, was there?
No. So
that was how the sort of, not loophole, but kind of got into the England squad, because there was a few select players as well that had a slightly similar sort of thing to you.
Yeah, so being from the Channel Islands, I was actually eligible to play for any of the home countries. So I'm not necessarily an Englishman, but growing up as a kid, that was who I supported. That's who I felt my affinity to. And so as an 8-year-old in Guernsey, not really knowing that there'd been many professional footballers from Guernsey before, to have an ambition to play for England was I thought was quite a big ambition. So having done that at 25 years of age and got to do it, it was a pretty cool feeling. When I look back now, I often wonder and think to myself, actually, what if my ambition would have been to have scored in the World Cup final for England? What if my ambition had been a little bit higher, rather than just play for England? Maybe my ambition should have been, I'm going to score a goal that wins the World Cup for England. Now that would have just seemed like fantasy as an 8-year-old kid. So I kind of didn't do that. But I do look back and think maybe I should have set my ambitions a bit higher, and then maybe I could have achieved a bit more.
What's Guernsey like? I've never been there.
Have you not?
Never.
Well, I was there last week, and it is, when the sun is shining, it's the most beautiful place. It has the most stunning sandy beaches, especially on the west coast of the island. It has some stunning restaurants, and obviously I'm a bit biased.
What people say, Guernsey, Jersey?
Guernsey and Jersey. Jersey's the other island, which is not quite as nice, but it's all right, Jersey. But Guernsey is stunning. It does feel like you're going back in time a little bit to a place where I don't know if you're even old enough to remember when people used to have veg on their hedge at the end of their road, and they leave a little box to put your money in.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you can imagine that happening anywhere in England anymore.
No.
But that kind of stuff still happens in Guernsey.
Oh,
so
wow.
People sell things at the end of their garden. They put a little box there, and they have a little honesty box where you put your money in.
Honesty box, yeah. Cool.
And it's that kind of place, and it's a beautiful, really laid back place, as you can possibly guess.
Yeah.
And it's a place that I would contemplate going back and living when I get a little bit older.
That's nice, really nice. I want to say thank you very much for your time. Really, really good interview. Thank you for inviting me to your home. It's a beautiful place that you got here.
Thank you, mate.
Last question.
Yep.
When I started my business when I was younger, my first business, it was a sales company, and part of the culture, mostly men, alpha type men, was to keep them motivated. So we come up with a slogan, and the slogan goes like this: be happy, never content.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to ask Matt Le Tissier, what does be happy, never content mean to you?
I try to be happy every day of my life, because I know there's a lot of people in positions of authority who don't want people to be happy, and so I just do it to piss them off, really. But I love life, and I'd slightly disagree with that, because I am quite content in my life. I think I can be content and be happy. I think you can do that in your life In the workplace, I think it's different. There's different motivating factors. So I think in the workplace, that actually is pretty sound advice. But I think in my life, at my stage in my life, I can be content and I can be happy as well.
Great answer. Thank you again. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to getting all the feedback from the subscribers and viewers.
Nice one, mate. Good to meet you.
Good. God bless. Thank you.